Hey, everybody, and we are live with office hours today, where I spend the next 30 minutes talking about all the topics that relate to the job search and the military community when it comes to networking and career exploration. So, thanks again for joining. I do want to give a call out before we get started to our partners at Acuity International. Have you ever heard of Ascension Island? Yeah, me neither. Never heard of it, but it exists, and it's about midpoint between Africa and South America. And they have a contract looking for medical professionals working on the island. To me, it's like the Kwajalein Atoll of the Atlantic Ocean, which they also have medical roles on Kwajalein Atoll. And what's exciting about Acuity International for our community is they tackle some of the world's biggest problems overseas primarily. So they are doing security, intel, medical. They've got roles in Somalia, roles in Iraq. They've got Kwajalein, Marshall Islands, and Ascension Islands. So if you're looking for, an adventure, or as my retired Sergeant Major friend Lynn Cheek said, resort living in Kwajalein, check out Acuity International. And we've got a whole bunch of roles listed on hiremilitary.us that you can check out as well, and we'll forward your resume directly to their director of talent acquisition. So, if you are joining me today, how this works is I'm going to talk about the topics of the week, the things that come front of mind from my engagement with the community. And what I'm going to tell you is that you can ask questions, questions on what I say, comments on what I say. You can also share where you're joining from. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Let me know where you're joining from, and if there are any questions you have about the transition as I get into the topics of choice. So the first topic of the week is going to be on translating content. And this is a difficult topic to hit. And what I mean by translating content is that there are a lot of people in the midst of their military transition that are being taught that they need to translate their titles, translate their experience on resumes and their profile so that they can be found by recruiters, so people know what they do, right? And they're not wrong by saying that. I don't think many recruiters are searching for platoon leader or first sergeant or S2 NCO or N1, right? They're searching for HR director, security manager, and so on and so on and so on, operations manager, things like that. The problem is people come out of TAP 8 months, 10 months, 12 months out, and they automatically think they have to translate it. But you don't know, one, what you want to do. So your translating goes hodgepodge. And two, what people in that job do every day. So you translate it in a way that makes sense. And so what we get from these translations is we get a hodgepodge of rank translations and not how the knowledge, skills, and experience translate to a specific role you're going for. And one of my examples from my post this morning was one of the first articles I wrote was called "What in the World is a Sergeant Major?" And it came out of my time as one of the finalists for the White House Fellows Program. In fact, at the time, it was the furthest that an enlisted service member had ever gotten. And I went in there and I spoke to 20 of the top leaders in the DC area, and only one, the Secretary of the Navy, had any idea what a sergeant major was. The other 19 in the DC area said, "Are you a sergeant or are you a major? Like, what do you do? I don't understand this." And so I explained to them that my role in the military was much like a COO's role in industry. That I handled a lot of the support to operations, make sure things ran smoothly and aligned with the vision. And I wasn't wrong when translating the military title. The problem is, after I wrote that article and it went viral, hundreds or thousands of E9s automatically translated their titles to COO as if that's what they're going to do. And then all the commanders changed to the CEO. because that's what they are in the military. But you're not that in the private sector, either case. Not right off the bat, unless you start your own business. Then you can call yourself whatever you want. The challenge is that when you start calling yourself a COO or a CEO, they're hiring external consultants to go find those people, and it's not going to make sense to them. And then you're applying for program manager roles, but you're a CEO or as a COO or an HR manager. It just doesn't make sense. And we're not that without the experience in industry, without the experience of managing a P&L, without the experience of managing a large industry staff, which is different. So I'm not saying you don't have the foundations to go be that. I'm saying you are not that right off the bat. 99.5% of the time. And then what I'm going to tell you is that don't start off your transition trying to write a resume where you translate everything. Because what's going to happen is you're going to homogenize that resume. And people like me are going to look at it and have no idea what you did in the military. So we can't see where, they definitely have this experience. They were this, or they were that, or they'd be a great fit here. We can't do that if we look at a resume and it's all these bizarre terms that don't make sense. And so what I'm going to tell you is do not translate your resume until you are at least 3 months out. That's about the earliest you can start applying to jobs. And until you've spoken to at least 5 people that have been in that job, right? And a lot of times when you've spoken to 5 people that have been in that job, and you understand what they do every day, what their biggest challenges are, where their successes are, what metrics they track, how they track them, what their boss's priorities are, just get yourself into the mind of what they do. Once you do that, then it's pretty easy to translate the content of your profile to align with that because you probably have it in your background. So I want you to think about that. In the meantime, thanks for joining us, Devin. Appreciate it. Louisville, I got to come out there for the Bourbon Trail at some point. I really missed out not going all those times. Catherine, thank you. We've got Bossier City. I actually supported some stuff down there before. It's a cool place. Boston, I was almost the director of security for TD Garden. Too bad about those Celtics this year. And then we've got Northern Virginia. We've got this Giovanna lady calling from Tampa. Thanks for joining us. And what do you do with a general when he stops being a general? Catherine, that's an interesting, that brings in a story. I teach every general and admiral that gets out of service. And I had one of the in-person classes with a bunch of generals. And one of the generals said, did not like social media and turned around in the class and said, "You will always be a general." And I said to them, I said, excuse me, no, like the rest of the world doesn't really care. The only time I'm calling you general is if I'm in your office or I work for you. The rest of the time, I'm not calling you general. And once you are no longer in the military, I'm going to call you by your first name. Like, that's it. And so that just fits in with a lot of what we have to talk to people about the transition. It's more than just getting a job. It's about a mindset change. It's about a timing change. I spoke with an awesome recently retired 2-star last night, and they said that they're used to working 80 to 100-hour weeks. And I said, I know. And so now you have to figure out how to get your life down to 40, 45, 50. You don't have to work that hard. And all that's part of the transition. So keep that in mind. And then just something now that Giovanna mentioned about Tampa brought up, I still am upset that I've been down to Clearwater twice for a week each time and Tampa 2 or 3 times. And it wasn't until I got back that my friend Chris Patteris told me that Hulk Hogan has a bar in Clearwater. I would have went every night until I saw him. So I missed out on that one. And Giovanna said that next time I come back, I've got to go if I recall correctly. So, all right. So the next part is let's talk about brass tacks, right? I teach a Mastering LinkedIn webinar every month, sometimes twice a month. I put out a lot of free content. I take a lot of phone calls. And so what I share is that something that a lot of industry does is, if I am going to take a call, I'm going to give you something to do on that call. And then I'm going to go away and I'm not going to do another thing. Not another thing for you unless I know you're your good friend. Until you come back to me and say, I did it. Because, until that happens, I'm not really sure you want to put in the work. And so when it comes to one of the most valuable things for us out here in the private sector is time. It's not as valuable in the military because you just work all the time. It's all part of giving back. But out here, it's time is very valuable. It's very important. And every time I spend time on someone, I'm taking away from family time, exercise time, personal time, work time, I'm taking away time. I'm giving it to you. And so for me to be able to know that it's worth giving it to you, I have to know you're going to value my advice. And so a lot of times I will recommend people do things. And you know what happens? They don't do it. And so I don't spend any more time on them. And so you guys have to really think about that. If you are talking to someone in industry, if you're talking to a recruiter, if you're talking to, an executive, if you're talking to a veteran, if you're talking to a non-veteran, and they tell you or recommend you do something, say they recommend you read War and Peace. Hey, you know what? I think you would really help you with your transition. You should go read War and Peace. Well, if you want their support, you go to the library and rent the book, or you go to the bookstore and buy the book and you read the whole darn thing. And then you tell them you read it and how good it was, right? That's how you start to, find mentors, right? Because until you show you're willing to put in the work, it doesn't go. Now the next thing is let's talk about networks. I could look at every single one of you and make introductions. We can get on a phone call. I can make a personal introduction to someone in my community that would get you an interview. Every single one of you, right? I've got a massive network. But how do I know you're not going to blow the interview? How do I know that I'm recommending you to the right person? How do I know that you are going to represent my name, my reputation well? And how do I know that you're worth shooting a silver bullet for, right? That's the key to this. Our reputation means so much. I've been building my reputation over 8 years, and I still go back to the time my friend that worked Tesla, like 2 levels below Elon Musk, said they had a job that was like 150, 160, and they wanted a senior enlisted leader for. And I sent them somebody I had not spoken to directly. It came from a friend. And I got a call back and they said, why did you send that clown to me? They were horrible. I asked them to send me their resume and they asked me if I could help them. And my friend that worked for Tesla said, no, I will not help you with your resume. I am hiring someone for a job that doesn't need help for a resume. And so thankfully I had to go back and find a stellar person in my network that they hired. But, I took a gut shot on that one because I didn't look at the person. And so you've got to build relationships and trust. And so that goes into something my BFF, she calls me on LinkedIn, Kristen Tasavi, talked about networking before you need it, right? That's the key. Start building your network before you need anything. So when you reach out, it isn't just because you need something. It's not transactional. I do have Catherine asking about upcoming job fairs in Northern Virginia. Honestly, I would check with the transition centers in all the bases around here. You can find them online and you can just Google or email them or stop in and see what they have available. I don't really go to that many job fairs, so I'm sorry not able to help you there. So talking about mentors and sponsorships, I just want to kind of talk about mentorship. So, and I liken it to the dating scene, right? You wouldn't meet someone, a guy, a gal, and say, right off the bat, you meet them, hey, would you be my girlfriend? Right? You wouldn't say that. It's cringe, right? So why do we think it's okay to ask people to be their mentor? So I have mentors and I have sponsors. And I never once asked them to be my mentor or sponsor. The relationship built to a point to where they became mentors and sponsors. And I refer to them as mentors and sponsors. But I never asked, oh, are we going to go steady? I never asked them that, right? So you don't have to. And if you think back throughout your military career, you probably didn't have to ask people to be a mentor. They just assumed the position. And so, I want you to think about that, about the engagement, about saying thank you, about coming back to them, which is the onus on you, the mentee, and asking additional questions and managing that relationship. But to take it from stranger to somebody they know, to someone that's supportive, to someone that's advocating on your behalf is the key. The VA. I want to talk about like VA healthcare and the VA in general to our community. I went 6 years. I've been out 7.5. I went 6 years without VA healthcare. I had my disability rating. I was 100% eligible for VA healthcare. I have TRICARE as well. The local MTF is okay. It's good enough. But I was copay for my CPAP stuff. Copay. They stopped giving me inserts. I couldn't get chiropractic. None of that worked, or acupuncture for under TRICARE in the Northern Virginia area. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why I didn't go to the VA. It was because there was this residue, I'll call it, of hearing horror stories of people with VA care. And it got to the point where I'd spoken to so many people that work at the VA that love what they do, that cared about us. And I was like, why am I not taking advantage of this free benefit? And so I went and registered online. It took me like 3 minutes because the records are shared between the VA and the military treatment facilities, the military. It took me like 3 minutes to register. I set up my first online appointment. My PCM gave me her business card with her email and phone number on it. And now I have no copay. My CPAP stuff is sent to me. I just ordered online. My medications all come online. I got 2 new sets of inserts. Every 3 weeks I go see a chiropractor, acupuncture. It totally changed my life. And I used the My Health Vet app to manage it all, because if you try to call, you get lost in the system. But if you do secure messaging on My Health Vet, you can, they have to respond within 2 days. And so even when it comes to my referral for my chiropractic acupuncture, when my last appointment is up, my chiropractor tells me, I come right home and I send a note to my PCM on My Health Vet and say, I just need a new referral. Within 24 hours, she's really fast. They send me a note back, or they call me and say, we put in a new referral. And then I send a note to community care saying, I have a new referral. I want to use the same chiropractor. And usually within about 2 weeks, I have the things all processed through and we're golden. Like they got the medical, they got the records, they got the referral, and they process it. And I'm there every 3 weeks. So there's no delay in service. If I get medicine, I just literally, if I get it from the military treatment facility, I literally email. I'm not going to sit in the pharmacy in any of the Fort Belvoir health system. I literally will email. If it's not something urgent, I'll email my PCM at the VA and say, hey, I just got this prescription. Can you put it in the system and have it mailed to me? It arrives in a few days. And then if it's something I need urgently, I'll usually say, hey, don't send it to the pharmacy here. Send it to CVS, and I'll go pay a small copay. But the idea is you can do this so effectively. This is the first time in my life at the VA I've had a PCM for we're about 2 years where they're responsive. I can send them questions. I can ask referrals, medical questions. They respond. They call me back. I get appointments. If I set an appointment for 45, 60 days out, I get texts that say, hey, there's a new availability. Push one if you want it. Like, it's been so amazing. I go to the clinic in DC and I get greeted by every single employee, like genuinely happy to see me. And I did not know it was that good. And so what I'll tell everyone is that I'll have a favor to ask of you. And that favor is, if you take advantage of VA benefits, VA health, GI Bill, VRNE, if you get community care, anything at all, please take a picture and post it. Please share the positive stories with your network. We've got to drown out the few negatives. And I found that most of the really negatives are people that haven't been in the system for over 20 years. So just keep that in mind. Please share the success. And for Catherine, it's not lucky. It's the CES, the continual referral. I just gave you the path. Send a note to your PCM, have them get a referral, have the PCM make sure that your provider faxed, well, I know it's still faxed the records of your care to the phone number that it's supposed to go to, and then secure message, community care, saying, I want my next batch of visits. And they have to respond within 2 days. And then you message them again and you just keep going through secure messaging and they'll get it done. That's the best way to do it. So yes, please share the successes. Now, one last tip, and it's really cool. I just forgot his name. Let me check real quick. I'm looking up. Oh, I got it now. So every couple days, I'll go into my network on LinkedIn and check who viewed my profile. And I'll scroll through, like, at a really quick pace, but see if anybody pretty cool pops up with a cool job title or a cool name, or somebody I think there would be value in me connecting with. And I'm at the point where I've got to delete someone to add them, but that's not that hard. And so I do that. And if I recommend you all do it as well, especially if you're in the job search. See if any recruiters checked out your page. And if they are, what I do is I send them a connection request with a note that says, hey, I noticed you checked out my page. Thanks for stopping by. I'd love to join your professional network. And most people get kind of like, oh man, I was snagged stalking or whatever. But you get a lot of cool people. And the other day I had General Brito was on my profile. And I said, hey, sir, saw you were stopped by my profile, would love to connect and join your professional network. And, he responded that he was in my transition course a while back and, might be reaching out for some LinkedIn help. And that's what I do, for a lot of these senior leaders. I help them share the things they love about service. And so I encourage you all to do that. I'm still waiting for Snoop Dogg to accept my connection request, or Ryan Reynolds. So I have sent out some of those and they just kind of, I'm not cool enough, but I check for them, for that cool person every once in a while. So I would encourage you to do that. And then I just saw some stuff about remote job fairs and again, you're going to have to look around. There's a whole bunch of those out there. I will share that we do have 5 new remote SkillBridge opportunities with one of our partners, customer.io. These are remote SkillBridge internships in 5 different work areas that all lead to very well-paying remote jobs. It's a fully remote organization. And so I do encourage you all to check out hiremilitary.us and go to our SkillBridge opportunities, because we've got the customer.io roles there. And then we also have some great roles if you have any like Python or coding experience, some really amazing roles with Datadog, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. And the moment you get out and have to go through the normal cycle, you're fighting with 800 to 1,000 candidates for every job. But SkillBridge gives you a step right in the door. So with that, I think I'm all caught up on topics for the day. I don't see any other questions up here. So I just want to thank you all for joining. And we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.